It was another quiet night at the office. No phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can join the conversation for the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. You can also text the show in real time at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. It appears on the screen here in the studio, as I said, in real time, and we'll try to incorporate it into the conversation. Don't forget the station does stream 24/7 like thousands of other radio stations do on the TuneIn app. Very simple to download if you don't have it. Seconds to do that. Punch in WCRN. Do me a favor, hit the like button. We know you're there, and then we're very easy to find, and you can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do that, no questions asked. Now, I do stream the show to our station Facebook and YouTube account, as well as my social media accounts at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Facebook, link, Twitch TV, X, and yes, we do stream live to Rumble, to the Joe Mangiacotti Show page on Rumble. So multiple ways to listen, multiple ways to participate. So today is October 7th, a date that carries immense gravity. 2 years ago today, the world witnessed one of the most brutal and calculated attacks of terror in modern memory. Hamas, with coordination and intent, unleashed rockets, infiltrated communities, slaughtered civilians, took hostages, all while the world looked on, scrambling to respond. And on that Sabbath day, they broke through Israel's defense in more than 100 breach points, stormed the kibbutz, opened fire on the music festival, and horrified the conscience of humanity. So today we remember, we hear the stories, we demand accountability. We also look hard at the policies and powers that made that terror possible and ask, how does the United States, how does any free society ensure this never happen again? So over the next hour, we'll cover the anniversary, the stakes in Middle East policy, the moral dimension, the lessons for intelligence and defense, and the urgency of confronting those who profit from death. But first, let's walk through what we do know. On that morning of October 7th, 2023, during the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, Hamas and allied militant groups launched what they called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. The attack began with a hail of rockets, more than 4,000 projectiles in the opening phase, targeting cities and civilian centers across Israel. Meanwhile, fighters used trucks, motorcycles, even paragliders, to cross into Israel territory. They breached the Gaza-Israeli fence in over 100 places, including the Via Elet Nuka units. And they struck military bases. They stormed villages. They massacred civilians. A music festival in Riham. 364 innocent lives lost there. Entire families slaughtered in their homes. In Be'eri, Nativ, Hasarara, Rafa Aza. 1,195 people were killed in the initial wave, 736 civilians, 379 security personnel, dozens of foreign nationals, and roughly 250 people, men, women, and even children, babies, were taken hostage and into Gaza. These weren't random acts of war, they were acts of terror. Organized, planned, savagely executed. In the sexual violence, the desecration, the taking and holding of hostages, all of that speaks to something more than warfare. Cruelty for the sake of terror, designed to break spirits and destabilize. That day for Israel's normal life turned into hell. For the region, it became a flashpoint that still burns. And it isn't over. It didn't just happen that day. As long as there are hostages, alive or dead, being held, that attack 2 years ago today is still in process. Israel's still under attack. And as long as those hostages, again, dead or alive, are being held, the attack of October 7th, 2 years ago, is still in process. So we must ask, how could a group like Hamas, confined to Gaza, muster such capability? The answer lies partially in external patronage, most notably from Iran. Iran's regime is not a benign actor. It uses its resources to support proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and yes, Hamas. The more money and weapons it can funnel through, the more lethal those proxies become. Now, some are going to argue that the funds released or unblocked from Iran are under humanitarian or oversight conditions. But strategy isn't just about purity of intent. It's about effects. Even constrained money, even loosened sanctions, can free up resources elsewhere. Resources that go into weaponry, tunnels, missile systems, drones. We've seen with those funds that they seldom stay in humanitarian uses exclusively. Now, the Biden administration's decisions, lifting some sanctions, negotiating access to Iranian capital, they carry consequences beyond the diplomatic optics. Those decisions reshape the balance of power. They enable terror. And today, that is something we must call out plainly. Another enabler, intelligence failure. Investigations in Israel showed, yes, Israeli investigations, warnings were available. Analysts saw disturbing training videos months in advance, but those warnings were dismissed, downgraded, shelved even. The complacency, the underestimation, it cost many lives. That failure of immigration and imagination is as serious as any weapon. Because the primary job of intelligence is to imagine worst case scenarios. Worst case, what the enemy might try. When you stop doing that, you invite surprises. And in this case, more than a surprise, you got mass terror. Consider what this day demands of us, not merely as spectators, but as citizens. When a government fails to defend its people, it betrays its first constitutional responsibilities. When terrorists use death, kidnapping, and terror to advance political aims, they must not be negotiated with as equals, only confronted by rule of law power. Israel's response must be robust, lawful, purposeful. And we cannot allow Hamas to rebound. It must be dismantled as both a governing force and a terror network. And that is not vengeance. It is the exercise of sovereign self-defense. International law permits it. So as long as discrimination and proportionality guide operations and civilians are protected where possible, then we're good. But the moral burden does not only lie on the Israeli military, it lies on every government that tolerates terror in its periphery. It lies on every nation that turns a blind eye to proxy funding. And it lies on us, the citizens, demanding our leaders live up to the duty of defense. On the home front, we have our own battles. Today, we see pro-Palestinian demonstrations in U.S. cities. Peaceful protest is a right we unambiguously support. But cheering or rationalizing October 7th or providing a platform for Holocaustal denial, terra apologia, or moral equivalence is not protest. It is a celebration of terror, and that crosses a line. We would not tolerate mass rallies in the 1940s that lauded Nazi concentration camps. We must not tolerate today rallies that de facto honor murder of innocents. The test of liberal democracy is not how much we tolerate, but how well we defend the vulnerable without sacrificing principle. We should demand our government and of our allies going forward sanctions, interdictions, intelligence cooperation, choke the supply chains that prop up terror. Make it impossible, not just hard, for Hamas to resupply. Don't push failed analysis for raising alarms. Don't punish them. Develop worst-case contingency planning, cross-agency accountability, and robust red teaming to challenge institutional bias. Recognize that there is no balanced neutrality in the face of genocide or mass terror. Allies must be asked, where do you stand? Clear lines should guide support, aid, and pressure. Remember, victims teach the truth, resist the distortion of history, resist the erasure of moral clarity in the name of false equivalency. But folks, we have to take a first break here on the Tuesday edition, October 7th, of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. We're going to take a break for 2 minutes, 2 seconds. We'll be back on the other side.
This October, Polar Park presents Boo in the Woo. The adult version is a haunted restoration tour with zombie-infested locker rooms, eerie tunnels, and decaying batting cages. Join us if you dare.
But don't worry, children can enjoy the weekends with Boo in the Woo for kids, with pumpkin decorating, carnival games, and family fun for all ages. Get your tickets now at polarpark.com/boo. This October, it's Boo in the Woo, just for you.
This is Jerry Doherty, host of Making Money Last, right here on WCRN. Like all business owners, I'm interested in why people choose to work with Boston Independence Group. So I asked my clients. The most common response, Jerry does not try to be all things to all people. Boston Independence Group is specialized, focused solely on retirement planning. My customers enjoy the difference. We do one thing, and we do it exceptionally well. Help other people live better in retirement. That's it. If you're ready to retire or making plans to retire, we can do for you what we've done for hundreds of other retirees throughout New England. Live better in retirement. Just give me a call. I'll show you how. My toll-free number is 877-772-1776. Again, that number is 877-772-1776. And you can visit us on the web at bostonindependencegroup.com. bostonindependencegroup.com.
Can you believe the chaos at our Worcester City Council meetings?
I know. I can't believe this is what our city council has become. So much chaos and drama. Not what I want for our city.
That's why I've been supporting Donna Calorio. She brings common sense to our city council. Donna cares about stop signs, public safety, the quality of life, the things people really care about.
Absolutely. I'm voting for Donna Calorio, too. She always puts Worcester first.
I'm Donna Calorio, and I approve this message. I'm committed to putting Worcester first.
Please vote on Tuesday, November 4th.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second segment of the Tuesday afternoon edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on this October 7th, second anniversary of the horrific attack on Israel 2 years ago today. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Ted A. behind the glass flying the board today. He'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. Let me go to the phones. Mark is waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that the Prime Minister of France has submitted his resignation. He's only been there for a month, but he's gone. He submitted his resignation before they threw him out on his keister. So that being said, a lot of people may not know, I didn't know, as an American, anything about the French system or very little about it. But apparently under the French system, Macron, who is the president, is in charge of international diplomacy, where, as the guy who just got his pink slip, he is the Prime Minister and under the French system is in charge of domestic or policy. So what this tells me is that you got a Trump effect going on, not only in France, but all throughout Western Europe. And it's a nationalist movement, and it's secure our borders movement. And it's a movement of the indigenous populations of all these various Western European nations whose indigenous populations are being treated like second-class citizens, and they're sick and they're tired of it, and they want these bums out.
They do, Mark. I agree with you 100% because we're seeing some pushback, and thank you for the call, some pushback in France, but I think we need to look at England too, because you're seeing some of the British nationalism pushing back. I mean, according to the articles I'm reading, since they passed the law about social media posts and saying anything that the government doesn't like, 17,000 people have been arrested. We covered the story of the British comedian who flew back from the United States with 5 armed police waiting to take him into custody when he landed at Heathrow. We saw the stories of people, mothers, doing 24 months in jail for sharing a meme or even liking something. And I argue that we were headed there. Under the Biden administration, I think what would happen under Hillary administration, what started with Barack Obama, would continue with Joe Biden. Maybe he didn't know it. He didn't understand what was going on. And I personally feel that Barack Obama was the power behind the Biden administration. And we were headed there. I think we can look at what's going on in Britain today and think that could have been us. But I call it, so reference, Mark, to the Trump doctrine, I think is being shared and modeled around the globe, because Trump has shown these leaders what can happen. Now they got to be able to get into power and hold the power, though. But I was watching a clip from one of these citizen journalists in Canada the other day, and I've shared it on the Facebook, on the show Facebook page, and I think the X account. But a Muslim who was talking in Canada while they were protesting, and the citizen journalist thanked him for being so honest, because he said the purpose, their mission is to take Canada over. And by our own, both American and Canadian think tanks and research centers have said by 2060, Muslim will be the largest religion on the planet and will be the majority of the planet. in that they will, in Canada as well as the United States, work their way into our government, and Sharia law will come and so forth. Take that for what you want. Take it at face value, take it with a grain of salt. Just there are those that have set the sights to fundamentally changing our government, Canadians' government, but our government in that parts of the Constitution would have to be eliminated. The Constitution and Sharia law can't coexist, so one has to give. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. And don't forget to text if you'd like at 617-297-8388 to answer 723. This is the new station cap I'm wearing. It's a red cap with the WCRN logo on it. And I think you might have thought it was a different red cap. No.
Oh, where's mine? I got to get one.
It's in my office for you. It's, these are red caps. We usually do blue. So that's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a station baseball cap that happens to be MAGA red. 508-871-7000. And don't forget, we're streaming. So if you want to join me on Facebook, X, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, or Rumble, you can do that at Joe Mangi Show. But this is 2 years after October 7th. And those wounds, at least for me, are fresh. And they're not fresh just for me, but they're fresh for Israel. And anyone who recognizes the fundamental duty of government, and that is to protect citizens, to uphold the rule of law, and to see justice done with brutal criminals strike. When they strike, the government and the law has to be fast and swift. And then that Simchat Torah morning, Hamas executed and coordinated a campaign of terror unlike anything Israel had seen since 1948. Thousands of rockets, sustained infiltration, massacres in villages, and of course at the music festival. Hundreds made into hostages. The human toll was staggering. Civilians slaughtered, families destroyed, children murdered, and the sexual crimes documented and investigated. The world watched. Many governments called it terrorism. Many people cried out for accountability. This is not just a tragedy to be mourned and then filed away. As I said in the first segment, the attack 2 years ago on this date is still underway. When they took those hostages, it continued the attack. It is still in progress. It didn't end when the sun went down 2 years ago. It didn't end with negotiations or anything. It will not end, does not end until those hostages, those prisoners, those kidnapped individuals are returned alive or the remains. This is not just a tragedy to be mourned and filed away. It is happening. It is a wake-up call. It exposed not only the savagery of an organization that celebrates murder, rape, and hostage taken, but the strategic and moral failures that allowed such brutality to be financed and organized, whether by direct sponsorship, permissive financing, or the indirect effect of lifting economic pressure in those sanctions, Joe. Iran's ability to bankroll proxies like Hamas has been central enabling factor. The unfreezing and movement of Iranian funds in recent years, even when constrained by humanitarian stipulations, has had strategic consequences. More resources in the hands of a regime that already sponsors terrorism across the region. And for Americans, and for any citizen who believes in limited government, in the sovereignty of nations, the lesson is clear. Weak or inconsistent policy invites aggression. A nation that cannot or will not cut off the financing and supply lines that sustain violent non-state actors ends up complicit, however indirectly, in the violence they commit. So if we value liberty in human life, we must insist on policies that make it impossible for terrorists to operate freely while preserving our constitutional principles here at home. That means intelligence-led action, targeted sanctions, lawful military responses when necessary, and rigorous prosecution of war crimes and sexual violence. It also means refusing to normalize or excuse demonizing protests when they cross into anti-Semitism or into support for terrorism. So here on the home front, the anniversary has been marked by these pro-Palestinian demonstrations in many cities. Now, peaceful protest is an American right. The right to assemble, the right to protest peacefully. But when demonstrations on a day of mass slaughter become a platform for anti-Semitic chants, equivocation, or for celebrating the attackers, the question is not political correctness. It is a test of our civic character. Tolerating or ignoring chants that echo the hatred of the 1930s or permitting rhetoric that invokes sympathy of terrorists is morally and politically corrosive. We would rightly condemn any mass public rally that cheered on celebrating Nazi programs in the 1940s. We must not treat the defense of the Jewish people any differently now. And finally, justice demands both clarity of purpose and fidelity to law. Hamas must be dismantled as an operational governing power through military pressure where necessary, through international cooperation to squeeze sponsors and supply lines, and through courts and tribunals for crimes against humanity. We should demand that perpetrators of sexual violence, hostage taken, and mass murder be investigated, prosecuted, and punished to the fullest extent, consistent with international and domestic law. That is not vengeance. That is the application of justice in defense of civilization itself. But folks, we have to take a mid-show break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget to follow me at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show, on all my social media platforms and joemangishow.com. Back in 2 and 10, folks.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. Here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. We've got partly to mostly sunny skies. Highs around 80 degrees. It is your final summery day tonight. Clouds will increase with late rain forming, and rain is really a big part of your Wednesday forecast. In fact, I've got us on a weather alert for downpours and showers in the morning and lunchtime, and that will then lead us into partly cloudy skies by tomorrow afternoon as we begin that clearing process. But temperatures will be much cooler for the second half of the week. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central 830 WCRN.
Did you know most chicken restaurants fry their food in inflammatory canola oil, the kind linked to chronic inflammation and health issues? At New Chicken, we're rewriting the fast food playbook. Located at 318 Park Avenue in Worcester, Mass., we serve up delicious comfort food with a conscience. Our chicken is humanely raised and free from hormones and antibiotics. Then fried in clean, heart-smart avocado oil packed with nutrients and flavor. And our fries, forget the greasy stuff. Ours are cooked in traditional, savory beef tallow. It's how fries used to taste before processed oils took over. No factory oils, no synthetic shortcuts, just real, honest food made for people who care about what goes in their bodies. At New Chicken, your health doesn't get sidelined for convenience. You get both, the flavor you crave and ingredients that matter. Stop by today and taste the difference. New Chicken, where fast food finally grows up.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You can join the conversation for the time we have left together at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. So we had a major controversy erupt in Chicago over the weekend. And this is after the city's police department reportedly issued a stand-down order instructing officers not to respond to a call for backup from immigration and customs enforcement agents, ICE. The incident occurred during a confrontation between ICE agents and protesters outside their federal facility, where agents were surrounded by an increasingly aggressive crowd. ICE Director Matthew Lyons condemned the order, calling it a reckless and disgusting, and warning that it endangered federal officers and emboldened criminal cartels. Legal experts suggest the directive could violate both Illinois state law and federal statutes requiring cooperation among law enforcement agencies during emergencies. Now, there's a couple of things going on in different levels here. One is we have the protests that cross the line from peaceful protests to mob mentality.
You mean the riots?
The riots, the violence. Then you've got the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Does he not have anybody in his family or that loves him that can explain to him he's not that intelligent? Nobody is going to point that. How does that man get elected? Or he is intelligent and he purposely says these ignorant things. And I'll break down what I mean by that. Because he's suggesting ice-free zones. Now, folks, if you've ever listened to this show on a regular basis, you know my feeling. It's not just my feeling. It's the fact that there's no such thing as a sanctuary city or sanctuary state, other than you get to declare it. But that's just to make you feel good. It's virtue signaling. There's no mechanism in our Constitution or in our statute that allows you to pick and choose the laws you want to follow. Nor if you are of a political class, regardless of the evidence to this, contrary to this, doesn't mean that laws only apply to you or laws don't apply to you if you belong to a certain political party or a race or a gender or anything of that nature. The law of the land is the law of the land, regardless of any of those factors. So declaring an ice-free zone is about as effective as declaring sanctuary city status, because there's no such thing. Let me just finish this thought, Ted. I'll go to you. Because we have something in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause that simply says when a state or local state and then a federal law contradict each other or lap over each other, the federal law will be supreme in the case. Therefore, federal law is the Supremacy Clause. So the fact that ICE, regardless of your twisted view or what you think it is still a duly licensed agency created by the Congress of the United States, signed in by the President of the United States, whoever held those positions at the time, and it is the law of the land. Now, when you have a mayor like Brandon Johnson, who's not very quick on the uptake, says things like that, and then he goes on to tell us that the MAGA people and Trump want a second civil war. This is absolutely nuts, folks. Ted, you wanted to say something?
I was just saying, when a person of authority says, well, here's one zone that is free of something, they're implying that there's no law.
Yeah.
They're
Lawless.
implying that it is a hostile zone. So it's not if or what, it's now. It has to be now.
And to do that, because I would think, unfortunately, a lot of people may not be educated in the Constitution and the Supremacy Clause, and the fact that when he says ice-free zones, it's a feel-good, warm, fuzzy moment for him. It means nothing. So that might cause a lot of illegals to gravitate to those areas, thinking they have some kind of amnesty or protection or sanctuary, and they don't.
But it's implied, Joe.
It is implied because he's a moron. So, city police department ignoring a distress call from federal offices sets a very dangerous precedence. Now, the riot starting with ICE actually had to fire onto somebody. They put the call out and they say, hey, we need some backup here. They're starting to outnumber us. And what's going to happen is people are going to get hurt because the federal agents that are with ICE will have to defend themselves. People will get hurt. People will get shot. People will die. Now, this Snelly guy, one of the superintendents, he gets on there and he's trying to say there's no stand-down order. Now, before we go to this, because I'm watching him for the first time, and all I'm getting is the hit. This guy is so full of it. And I think he's pulling one of these Bill Clintons. It depends on what the definition of is. Because he's saying, we did not issue a stand-down order. But the actual CAD system, that's the automated dispatch system for the police department, and the tape, this audio, all your 911 and dispatch is all recorded, folks, in every police department. And what the order is to withdraw, cancel anybody headed there. Where their words, we're not responding to this 999, cancel all calls to there. So no one said stand down order.
Sure sounds like stand down.
But it doesn't arose by any other name, folks. Saying we're not responding this, cancel anybody headed there, we're not sending help, is equal to a stand down order. Do you have the audio of Snelly talking? Let's play that.
Calling his press conference to talk about some of the things that's going on in the city. So I want to be clear about one thing. This is about law enforcement response to these types of incidents. So I want to be clear that I'm going to limit my responses to that. So it would be appreciated if your questions are around our law enforcement response to what we're seeing here with federal agents and immigration enforcement and how we respond. I've been quiet a little too long because I want to stay out of the politics of this because,
right.
As you know, there's
not
a lot
enough
of
that. So a little research on this guy, you find out he's been in trouble for saying stupid stuff before. You start to wonder how he got to where he is. But here's the story. And I want you to really hear this. Federal ICE agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they were engaged in an operation in Chicago. Protesters surrounded them. Things got heated. The agents, who are federal officers, called for backup. The Chicago Police Department's chief of patrol ordered a stand down. He did not, according to the audio that we have listened to, according to the CAD system, the automatic or automated dispatch system where everything is text out, no time does the word stand down order appear. But they are told to cancel response and literally say the words, we are not responding to this. We are not sending anyone. And the dispatcher, who clearly can't quite grasp what she's hearing, says, let me ask this. Let me confirm this. Cancel response. We're not responding to this. The officer comes back, says, yes, Chief of Patrol ordered. We're not sending anyone. That's a stand-down order. Let that sink in for a second. Federal agents surrounded by hostile crowd asking for help, and the local police sworn officers were told to don't go. We're not responding. Now, I can't believe that any of those officers, if any, did not have the gut reaction to respond. Now, there might be one or two who are checked out, who have drunk the Kool-Aid and they're in the bubble, maybe. But being around police officers in my entire life, regardless of the agency, department, but if they wear the badge and they're sworn an oath and they're in trouble, naturally you respond, because you might call that code one day and you want your backup to show up. ICE Director Matthew Lyons didn't mince any words. He called this decision disgusting and reckless, a betrayal of the badge. There's got to be some Chicago police officers feeling pretty crappy about themselves this morning. He went further. He said there's been an uptick in threats against federal agents from Mexican cartels operating in the U.S. Yeah, Mexican cartels are operating in U.S. cities. And they just took into custody, by the way, kind of breaking news, breaking before I came on the air. There's been bounties put on specific ICE officers' head by cartels, offering $2,000 for information leading to where they can find certain ICE officers. They're leaders, they're officers, they run a crew. So Matthew Lyons is blaming these sanctuary policies. These policies that are made up and have no weight or teeth, they're absolutely useless, but they do project a feeling that you're safe in that city. And for some of it, you are, because the mayors and therefore the chiefs are literally telling the sworn officers who are sworn to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the land not to enforce them, to look the other way, to ignore it.
Stand down.
And yeah, that's what it amounts to, the same kind of policy Chicago has doubled down on under Mayor Brandon Johnson. So here's where we are in 2025 with cartel-linked activity increasing, legal border crossings at records high before, and local police being told to ignore federal law enforcement officers in distress. We have to take our third and final break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Stick with us. Back in two.
Looking for a fuel and food stop that truly stands out? Experience the Yatco difference. At Yatco, we're dedicated to bringing you the best customer service, the highest quality products, and a commitment to making your life on the go easier. Yatco has 15 convenient locations across central Massachusetts, and now our newest spot at 75 Quonsigamut Ave in Worcester. Yatco, where every stop keeps you going. Are you looking for a holistic approach to your health? One that supports your body's natural ability to regulate, adapt, regenerate, and heal. Look no further. The Bioregulatory Medical Institute, BRMI, a nonprofit global organization dedicated to advancing the science and art of bioregulatory medicine, welcomes you to their free and rich library of resources. You'll find articles, podcasts, videos, and more at brmi.online. BRMI believes health freedom is a basic human right, honoring medical ethics and the innate intelligence of the human body. When your body is properly supported, it will thrive. If you're looking for the root cause of illness, physical, emotional, or spiritual, visit brmi.online. brmi.online.
Did you know your business loses $1,685 per employee each year? Poor health doesn't just mean sick days. It drains energy, lowers productivity, and impacts your bottom line. I'm Kelly Hamilton, certified holistic nutritionist, ICU nurse, and owner of A Better Path to Wellness. I help businesses create healthier workplaces so employees thrive and companies save money. Let's optimize the wellness and productivity of your team. Call 774-253-4934 today.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the fourth final segment on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You can join the conversation by dialing 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. It will get you into the studio for two-way talking conversation. What say you? Don't forget the text line, 617-297-8388. Now, you know me. I always back the Constitution because it's not just some dusty piece of parchment in a museum. It is the owner's manual for this country. And the Constitution couldn't be clearer. Article 6, the Supremacy Clause, says federal law is supreme law of the land. States and cities can't nullify federal law. They can't obstruct federal officers in the lawful performance of their duties. And regardless of how many times you snap your heels together and say, I wish ICE was evil, it doesn't change the fact it's a duly authorized agency created by Congress of the United States, signed into law by a president. It's there. They are not Nazis. They aren't disappearing people. They aren't thugs. And Mayor Johnson, nobody wants a second civil war except maybe you. Yet here we are, with elected officials deciding which laws they'll obey and which they'll ignore based on political ideology, not fact, not rule of law, not the Constitution. We're back to feelings. And that's not resistance, guys. That's rebellion in slow motion. Think about this. Every police officer, from a rookie beat cop to a big city chief, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That oath doesn't come with a footnote that says, unless the mayor disagrees with federal policy. So can a mayor tell you to ignore your oath? Can they tell you to ignore the Constitution? When a local commander tells his officers to stand down, to ignore a call for help from a federal agent, he's not just breaking policies, he's breaking faith with the very idea of law enforcement. If that doesn't chill you, it should. Now, I get it, the counter-argument. We've heard it for years. The left says sanctuary policies build trust with immigrant communities. They say we don't want people afraid to report crimes. And you know what? That sounds compassionate, but it's not. Because compassion that violates the law isn't compassion. It's corruption with a smile. And it does give a false sense of security. And when police say that policy puts officers in danger, when it lets violent offenders back on the street, it stops being about trust and starts being about control, political control. Let me give you an example. Just last month, ICE tracked down a previously deported gang member wanted for assault in Elyne, Illinois. But local police refused to detain him because of the sanctuary rules, which shame on all those officers who think that's a thing, who think that this childlike declaration of sanctuary status is supreme over federal law. You probably, maybe you shouldn't actually have a badge, but let's put a pin in that. A week later, that same man that they refused to do their job on stabbed a woman outside a grocery store. So that's not hypothetical. That's the real cost of feel-good policies that ignore law. And this goes deeper, though, because it's not just about one city. It's about the idea of America as a sovereign nation. If federal law can't be enforced inside our own borders, if local officials can't decide which parts of the Constitution they'll follow, then what's left of sovereignty? What happens when a state decides to stand down on federal tax collection, or election law, or civil rights enforcement? Do communities get to exempt themselves from all of those laws? From the IRS, from election law and, again, civil rights. We've seen this movie before, folks. It was called Nullification, and it tore this country apart in the 1850s. And we don't want to repeat that history, not because we forgot it. It's because we've decided to ignore it. Let me tell you something else. Director Lyons warned about cartel threats inside U.S. cities. So that's not paranoia. That is intelligence reporting. And now they've arrested people in connection to the bounty put on ICE officers. The cartels have expanded their networks into cities like Chicago and Atlanta and Phoenix. They use local gangs to move product, launder money, intimidate witnesses, and they'll do it under the protective umbrella of audience sanctuary laws. When you create ICE-free zones, you're not protecting families, you're protecting felons. You're advertising that the city is open for illegal business. It's on par with the Wild West before law went west, before the marshals came to town, where you could flee from community to community and your crimes didn't follow you. So when you create these ICE-free zones, again, figment of your imagination, you're not protecting families, you're protecting those felons. And for the White House, this White House, to finally blast Chicago's mayor over it, that's how bad it's gotten. Even they had to say enough. So here's the question, folks. And it's not rhetorical. When does refusal to enforce the law become criminal negligence? If an officer disobeys a direct order to save a fellow officer, he's fired, maybe prosecuted. But what happens when a mayor does it or a police chief? Where's the accountability? We're told this about equity and inclusion, right? But tell that to ICE agents who are surrounded by an angry mob waiting for help that never came. Tell that to the families who've lost loved ones to people who should have been deported. Tell that to the officers who still believe in the oath they took, even when their leadership does not. We are a nation of laws. We are not a nation at all. They define us. They guide us. When you pick and choose which parts of the Constitution you'll honor, you can't say rule of law when it suits you, in resistance when it doesn't. Ted, you want to add?
Yeah, one of the key phrases that we were taught as young men is that obeyance to the law is freedom. And freedom is obeying the law.
It does give us order, and it gives us something to guide by. And our founding fathers saw this as going to be an issue, and that's why we have Article 6 Supremacy Clause. Because with this ICE-free zones and sanctuary cities, once we start down that road, there's no stopping it. Every state becomes its own fiefdom, every city its own kingdom, and every law becomes a strong suggestion, not a law. And that's not liberty, that's anarchy, wearing a necktie. So as we head into the end of the show today, I'll leave you with this thought. Law and order isn't about punishment. It's about protection. It's the social contract that says, I'll follow the rules, you'll follow the rules, and we'll all live in peace. But when leaders tear up that contract for political points, the people who pay the price are the ones who still believe in the system. The police, the citizens, the taxpayers, the law-abiding citizen. That is who gets betrayed. So what do we do about it? Say again?
I said, I know what to do.
Oh. Yeah. So when the mayor openly declares parts of the city off limits to federal enforcement, he doesn't merely make a symbolic statement, he challenges the very premise of national sovereignty, the rule of law, the compact that binds local, state, and federal governments. That is exactly what little Brandon Johnson has done, signing an executive order to create ice-free zones. And again, seriously, there's nobody in his family, nobody in his administration, somebody walking by City Hall, somebody couldn't say to him, hey, that's not a thing.
Stupido.
That means nothing. Do you get that? You don't have the authority, you don't have the power. There's no such thing as saying, I'm going to pick and choose the laws I want to follow, the federal law. It doesn't exist, you jamoke. So these ice-free zones on city property, barring ICE from using municipal facilities like parking lots, libraries, or parks for immigration enforcement staging. Yeah, you can be a petty juvenile jamoke. We're on the radio. But it doesn't change the mission of a federal agency or the authority of that federal agency. The White House responded with visceral language, calling the policy sick and accusing the mayor of shielding rapists, killers, and traffickers, which in fact it does. 100%. This is not politics as usual. This is a direct confrontation with federal authority. If allowed to stand, it sets a dangerous precedent. Any city executive could carve out zones where U.S. law is selectively enforced. That undermines the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, which places a federal law above conflicting state and local rules. It undermines the very idea that immigration is a national responsibility, and it gives an opening for criminal actors to exploit those gaps, and they will. But folks, we're coming up to the end of the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, you can always watch the streaming, and this is turned into a podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, any of those, you know where the drill is. But this will wrap up the Tuesday edition. I'm back tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Same bad time, same bad channel. All right, folks, Joe out.